Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. This is Brownsugar Commentary and I am your girl, Kayla. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe for more videos. Okay, so this video is basically part 2 to my conversation on stereotypical black characters in TV and film. In part 1, if you haven't checked it out, check it out already. But in part 1, we were talking about some OG black stereotypes, their origins, the history behind it, all that good stuff. So definitely check that out. But now we're going to go into some newer stereotypes that I've seen in like more recent times, and or some variations of the OG stereotypes, and so on and so forth. All right, let's get into it. The first one we're going to talk about is the one we all know and we all love. I talked about this a little bit in the Netflix conversation, and that is the black best friend stereotype. Yes, the black best friend stereotype. Also, it can be known as this token black, because basically they're usually the only person of color on the show, or movie, if it's a movie, and their whole purpose for living is to serve, you guessed it, the white protagonist. Much like the mammy, much like the magical Negro stereotype, the black best friend is just there to offer advice, be moral support, or just kind of just be there to serve as company for the white protagonist. They usually don't have much going on, not much characterization to them. I've noticed a lot if they're male, they're usually cool, not all the time, but sometimes they are, or they're really good with women, or have a like unlimited amount of advice about women. They also might be good at like a particular thing, like they're good at music, like singing or playing an instrument, or they're good at playing some type of sport. This is not always the case, but it's very common. I've seen that a lot. Another example is like, if it's a woman, they're very much always sassy, outspoken, full of attitude, almost like a sapphire, if you will. Not all the time, but most of the time that's how I see usually the black, if it's a black best friend or biracial best friend that's supposed to be a black best friend, but I digress. But yeah, there are so many examples of a black best friend trope. I mean, it's literally in every Netflix original right now, but also some OG ones are like Gerald and Hey Arnold's, or literally any other black guy on a Nickelodeon show, especially like Dan Schneider-esque shows, like Michael and Zoe 101, or Andre Victorious, or Zach in Unfabulous. There usually is not much, like in terms of like Disney Channel shows. I don't see this as often, but sometimes it is. But like, I guess like one I can think of at the top of my head is like Angela on Boy Meets World. But yeah, usually it's like I said, black best friend. They're just kind of there to fill the diversity quota of the show because they're usually the only black person there, which is really sad. But yeah. Going right along, we have the sassy lady trope, which I definitely differentiate from the sapphire, because I feel like the sassy lady trope is like she's just kind of there for more so comedic relief, whereas like a sapphire is there just as like a regular character. They're not necessarily funny. Sometimes they can be, but not all the time. But yeah, and sassy characters or sassy ladies are usually like a one-off character or like a guest character. It's not really a character you see all the time, but it's not uncommon. Like I just said, in the black best friend stereotype, they can be the women versions of this are usually kind of sassy, but like I said, not always. So that's why I give it its own category. Also, I've noticed about this sassy lady character is usually that they're like a receptionist of some kind, especially if it's like an office setting or a hospital setting. This is very common. Like, even I remember like one of these seasons of Stranger Things, and they like go to like a hospital, and there was, what do you see? A sassy lady right there at the front. Okay. But yeah, they're usually there as comedic relief. They're there to give whoever the main character is like a hard time, and they're there for a little one-off joke. But usually I've seen them as like recurring characters, like in terms of television. Like let's say Drake and Josh, Helen's character is a sassy lady to me. I don't really see her like a sapphire, but you can argue she could be a sapphire. But to me, she's more sassy, like just to give Drake, what was it, Drake's character? No, Josh's character sass. Also, if you watch Hannah Montana, Roxy, the bodyguard who came in the later seasons of Hannah Montana, sassy. But yeah, literally anything Scrubs, if you watch Scrubs, there was like this one lady who was the receptionist. She was very much sassy. But yeah, they don't really have much else to do just to provide sass and to be comedic relief. Next, we have the plus size friend, which once again I differentiate between just the black best friend because I see this often in all black shows. But this can also be said for like just plus size characters in general, but obviously this conversation is exclusive to black characters, so I felt like it was still worth mentioning. The plus size character is almost treated like the black best friend in terms of, okay, we want to like represent a person that's like bigger on the show, but we're not committing all the way to making them a well-rounded character kind of deal, because usually everyone else on the show is very thin or average sized, but they put them in there just for the sake of diversity, but usually they have nothing to do. They're usually comedic relief once again. They're there to provide jokes or be the butt of the jokes. They're usually hypersexual or promiscuous at times. If they are a woman, they're usually like chasing after a man that clearly does not want them. Yeah, that is just kind of like their sole purpose. And sometimes they could be the most interesting person on the show because they're usually the funniest, because the person that's playing them usually just has good comedic timing and like they're just very endearing. But most of the time, the character just never gets the true justice they deserve because they don't get true storylines. They're just kind of there to provide the laughs. A good example of this is like Kim Parker on Moesha. And while I don't really consider her plus size by today's standards, she would definitely be considered thick in 2020. But obviously compared to Moesha and Niecy, she's definitely a little bit chubbier, I guess. To be, it's just baby fat, but what do I know? Okay, but she was definitely made to be this bigger girl, and she was very much boy crazy. She was always getting made fun of, or they were like, she was like the person to receive all like the shade. And you can also argue that like Nikki Parker, while it's her own show and while this show is kind of groundbreaking for like plus size women, she can definitely just be seen as that, despite her being the main character, but it does create this narrative of bigger women. Still love the show and all, but definitely that's what it is. Another example of this in more recent years is if you watch Insecure, we have Kelly, and Kelly is very much just that. It's the way we have 4 seasons of Insecure and we still know nothing about her character. I feel like we just learned what her character did for work just recently, which really sucks because, like I said, the girl who plays her does an excellent job. It is literally our favorite character. Every time you see her on screen, you know she's going to steal the show. But of course, she's never going to get the justice that she deserves. Maybe next season. I don't know. Whenever we get that. And also, if you watch the Hulu original show called High Fidelity with Zoe Kravitz, her friend, Charisse, very much the typical plus size best friend. Her character literally has nothing to do. And once again, the best character on the show. And the reason why I completely stopped watching that show is because I just got so pissed off that her character really just got thrown to the wayside for no reason. Like literally got nothing to do the whole season. And it pissed me off to high heaven. But yeah, that's the plus size friend. An example though that's worth mentioning of a plus size friend done correctly is of the character Jasmine on All My Block. While she's not black, she's still a girl of color, and like I said, the characterization or character development of this character is definitely worth mentioning. In season 1, of course, Jasmine was very much the stereotypical plus size friend. She was annoying, she was loud, outspoken, she was all up, on Ruby, very hypersexual type of character, and we were just like, okay, I see where we're going with this. But then season 2 and onward, we learn more about her and why she is the way that she is. She is literally once again carrying the show on her back along with Jamal. It's another conversation for another time, but she grew to be one of my favorite characters because I learned more about her and why she's the way she is. And she literally becomes more dimensional and layered. And so I really appreciate that because, like I said, it's good representation for plus size girls, because they're not just reduced to just their size. It's literally not even a topic of conversation on the show anymore, which I think is really dope. But yeah, that's a good example of like a plus size girl done correctly, a plus size friend done correctly. Then the last example or the last trope I have, or modern day trope, would be the dark skinned friend. Yes, the dark skinned friend. The dark skinned friend definitely feeds into this idea of colorism, that lighter is better and darker is not. Colorism, while I'm going to do a separate video on this because colorism is something that's very near and dear to my heart as a dark-skinned girl. However, we don't got time for all that. But basically, colorism is the discrimination of people of color that are darker, okay? And so usually when a dark-skinned girl is on a show, usually this is like a show, a predominantly black show. I see this most often, and basically the protagonist of the show is a lighter skinned girl, and then the best friend is darker, and they're literally just polar opposites of each other, where the light skinned girl is smart, she's desirable, she's ladylike, she's dainty, she's soft spoken, all the boys want her, she's popular, all that stuff. And then you have the dark skinned friend, and she's loud, she's sassy, she's chasing after some man, or she doesn't have a man or a steady relationship, she is aggressive, and yeah, it just feeds into all these negative stereotypes about darker skinned women. A good example of this is obviously the infamous Gina and Pam on Martin. We all see Pam was very much the butt of all of Martin's jokes, and while she had great comebacks, what was up with that? You know what I mean? Like, she was literally called all types of names, being compared to all types of animals. She never really had a steady relationship throughout the show. And yeah, she was just literally seen as the exact polar opposite of Gina. Another example of this, once again, is the Proud Family with Dejanay and Penny. They're literally polar opposite of each other, even the way they're dressed. If you notice, they're wearing the exact same thing, but Dejanay has on the tightest shirt with the belly out. Okay, you know what I mean? Like, I never noticed that as a kid until I literally looked at the poster for the show, and I was like, wow, they're literally wearing the same outfit, but I always thought she was wearing something a little bit different. And once again, Dejanay is a fun character, but at the same time, you gotta call it like you see it. And there's a very blatant colorism that your main character of the show is literally this nice and calm and collected girl, and then her best friend has an unconventional name, and she's loud, and she's literally the exact opposite of Penny in every way possible, and always chasing after Sticky, who clearly doesn't want her. And I say all this to say, in a nutshell, why these stereotypes are bad is because it definitely shapes the perception of society and how they view Black people. And especially for those shows that are, exclusive to Black people, the shows that are all, predominantly Black cast. Because I grew up, and I know, like I said, as a dark-skinned girl, and how people would be like, oh, dark-skinned girls are this and dark-skinned girls are that. And I feel like a lot of it had to do with how they were portrayed on TV. It just enforces those stereotypes. And especially how, even in today's time, these things are still kind of happening. It's just not helping the situation, you know what I mean? And while I believe, racist people are just going to be racist no matter what, no matter how positive you see Black people on TV, which is why I never subscribe to respectability politics, because if a person's racist, they're just going to be racist, and they're just going to see Black people how they see them. However, we still deserve to see ourselves positively and accurately represented on screen. We are very much layered people. We're not just people who experience negative emotions 24/7. We are dimensional people, and we should be written as such, because honestly, just writing a character and reducing them to just a particular stereotype is lazy writing. It's literally just lazy. It's so much more interesting. It makes for a better show and a better character if you write them better. Just like how you write your white characters and you give them all these traits and give them all these great stories, they very much deserve to be, Black characters deserve to have their stories told as well, especially in the year 2020. Come on now. And also, like I said, the more damaging stereotypes, especially the ones like the angry Black woman trope, how many times if you're a Black woman, have you sat there in a corporate setting or in a setting where you were surrounded by white people and you felt the need to express your opinion, but you held your tongue, or you didn't say as much because you didn't want to be perceived as angry or aggressive? Or how many times how many times coworkers have referred to me as sassy, just because I was just sharing my opinion or talking about something with a lot of passion, and I'm just like, no, ma'am. White people, if you're watching, stop calling Black people sassy. It's a microaggression, whether you know it or not. It's just not. It's not as endearing as you think it is. But yeah, how many times has that happened? Or like I said, how many times have you just been reduced to a particular stereotype just because people just assume that that's how you are because that's what they've seen on all types of television and media growing up. Like I said in my Netflix conversation, when you're growing up, or even in your formative teen years, how you see yourself on screen is how you internalize your sense of self. And if you're constantly seeing images of yourself being like negative stereotypes, like you're seeing yourself as aggressive, you're seeing yourself as angry, you're seeing yourself as undesirable, you're seeing yourself as just a background character to your own life, you're gonna internalize it and have that view. If you don't have this, like if you're not already like mentally strong, if you're already not having the highest of self-esteem, you're not going to have the best view of yourself. How many people have low self-esteem? And it's already hard to have high self-esteem in this type of culture that we live in with social media and all that. But then to go a step further and watch television shows and watch movies where you're supposed to see good portrayals of yourself and you're still not seeing that. That is why you have young kids on TikTok and the like, talking crazy about their race or talking about themselves. Like I seen young girls begging for validation on that app because why? They grew up seeing, well, really they grew up not seeing any portrayals of themselves. As I said before, like there's literally no black girls, fully black or brown skin or dark skin girls on television right now. And all the older examples are just really either colorist or horrible portrayals of us. There are some positive ones, obviously, in there, but there's a whole lot of negative, and to filter out that through that is just, it's a very daunting task. But I just want to leave with a quote that the late great Toni Morrison, my favorite writer of all time, once said, and is that the moment that white writers introduce a character of color into a story, imagination goes out the window. And that's just what it is. These stereotypes are. It's literally a lack of innovation and imagination. It's a lack of layering. It's a lack of really doing the work. And furthermore, there's no reason why there should be just one token diverse character, because it's not just black people this is happening to. It's happening in the LGBTQ plus community. It happens in other minority communities such as Asians and Latinx communities where they're not seeing themselves properly represented. Black people shouldn't just be the only person as you're trying to fill some diversity quota. We should have a bunch of people, because in real life, when you look outside, unless you live in a place where like it's like a whole bunch of one race, you look outside, you see all types of people. And so there should not be just one token diverse character and just say, all right, we just filled that quota. Like, no, we need to see way more representations of ourselves on screen and in television and all that good stuff. Like, it needs to happen and needs to happen now. These stereotypes need to end, especially in the black shows. Like, shame on y'all. Like, if you know what I'm saying? Like, if anybody should represent us properly, it needs to be us. And so all the TV show writers and filmmakers or future TV writers and filmmakers, please do your research and make sure you're writing your characters better than this. And do not reduce your characters to simple stereotypes. It's lazy. It's tired. We're over it. Okay. It's 2020. It's time we do something different. All right. All right. So that is all for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. Yeah, and I'll definitely see you guys next time. Peace out.